This presentation examines the role of social support in high-performance sport, with a specific focus on skeleton. The goal is to understand how social support influences athlete performance, coping, and motivation, and to present an applied framework that can be used to enhance support systems within a high-performance skeleton environment. Skeleton provides a unique high-performance environment. Athletes compete individually at high speeds, racing headfirst down an ice track. In skeleton, small errors can have significant consequences. Sliders are exposed to consistent pressure related to performance, progression, and risk, while also managing travel, training demands, and expectations. Because of this, performance depends not only on physical and technical ability, but also on how effectively athletes manage stress, maintain motivation, and regulate their responses under pressure. In this context, the social environment, particularly the support systems around the athlete, can play a critical role in shaping both performance and well-being. Research in sports psychology has consistently shown that social support is associated with positive outcomes, including improved performance, better well-being, and reduced stress. However, despite this strong body of research, there are several limitations within the literature. First, social support has been defined and measured in different ways across studies, making it difficult to compare findings and draw clear conclusions. Second, while we know that the support is important, there is less clarity on how it actually functions in high-performance environments. Finally, there is a gap between research and practice, particularly in understanding how social support can be intentionally structured and applied within specific sports such as skeleton. As a result, there is a need to better understand both the mechanisms of social support and how it can be translated into practical strategies for coaching. The purpose of this scoping review was to examine how social support functions in sport and to identify strategies that can be used to enhance support systems within high-performance environments. More specifically, the goal was to understand which types of support are most effective, how different sources of support influence athletes, and the mechanisms by which supports affect coping, motivation, and performance. For this, the aim was to develop an applied framework for use within a high-performance skeleton program. The guiding question for this work was, how can social support be effectively enhanced in high-performance sport? And how can those strategies be applied within skeleton? Social support is not a single concept. It's multidimensional. In sport, it's typically described as emotional, informational, tangible, and esteem support, based on work by Rees and Hardy, as well as Rosenfield and colleagues. Emotional support includes things like empathy, care, and reassurance, basically a feeling of being understood and supported as a person. Informational support is more about feedback, guidance, and coaching, so things that help the athletes improve and make decisions. Tangible support refers to a practical resource, like access to training, equipment, or financial support. And esteem support involves confidence building and reinforcement, helping athletes feel capable and confident in their abilities. One of the key takeaways from the literature is that these types of support aren't interchangeable. Athletes don't just benefit from having more support overall, they benefit from receiving the right type of support at the right time. For example, an athlete dealing with pressure before a competition might need emotional support, whereas during training, they may benefit from more informational feedback. So the effectiveness of support really depends on how well it matches the situation. In practice, this means support needs to be individualized and responsive to the athlete's needs, which can change depending on their stage of development, performance level, and demands they're facing. To understand how social support influences performance, it's important to look at stress and coping. In sport, stress isn't just about the situation itself. It's really about how the athlete interprets that situation. This is known as appraisal. Athletes are constantly evaluating whether something is a challenge or a threat, and whether they have the resources to deal with it, which is outlined in the work by Davenport and more recent research by Doron and Martinent. That initial appraisal then influences how the athletes cope, which shapes their emotional response and ultimately their performance. Social support plays a key role in this process. When athletes feel supported, they're more likely to interpret situations as manageable, use more effective coping strategies, and stay composed under pressure. On the other hand, if support is limited or poorly delivered, athletes may be more likely to see situations as threatening, struggle to cope effectively, and experience drops in performance. In addition to coping, social support also plays a critical role in shaping motivation. From a self-determination theory perspective, motivation can be understood along a continuum. At one end is intrinsic motivation, where athletes participate for enjoyment and satisfaction. In the middle is extrinsic motivation, which is driven by external rewards or pressures. At the other end is the lack of motivation, where there's little intent or engagement, as described in work by Vlachopoulos and more recent research by Gao and colleagues. The key point is that the social environment, especially coaches, parents, and teammates, has a strong influence on where an athlete falls on this continuum. When athletes are in supportive environments that promote positive relationships and give them a sense of involvement or autonomy, they tend to show higher levels of motivation, effort, and persistence. In contrast, environments that are more controlling or pressure-based can undermine motivation and lead to disengagement. So overall, social support doesn't just help athletes cope with pressure, it also shapes how they engage with the sport over time. One of the key findings from the literature is that not all social support is the same. First, support is multidimensional. Different types of support, such as emotional, informational, and tangible, serve different functions and are important at different times, which has been shown across studies like Rosenfeld and colleagues. Second, the source of support also matters. Coaches, parents, and teammates each provide different types of support. These roles aren't interchangeable. For example, coaches are often associated with performance-related feedback, while parents tend to provide more emotional and practical support. This has been highlighted in work by Wolfenden and Holt, as well as Bruner and colleagues. So overall, effective support isn't just about increasing the amount of support available. It's about making sure the right type of support is coming from the right source and that it matches the needs of the athlete. For instance, an athlete preparing for a competition might benefit from more emotional reassurance, whereas during training they may need more technical feedback from a coach. The second major finding is related to outcomes, and more importantly, the quality of support. Across the literature, social support is consistently associated with improved performance and well-being, while also helping reduce stress, anxiety, and burnout. This has been shown across a range of studies, including work by Rees and colleagues, as well as more recent research by Burns, Gao, and others. However, a key point is that the quality of support matters more than the quantity. High-quality, supportive relationships help athletes regulate stress and perform more effectively. In contrast, poorly delivered support, such as excessive pressure or controlling behaviors, can actually have negative effects, including increased stress and reduced motivation, which has also been highlighted in more recent studies in this area. So overall, it's not just whether support is present, it's about how that support is delivered that determines whether it has a positive or a negative impact. The main contribution of this review is an applied framework for enhancing social support in high-performance skeleton. This framework is built around 4 key components. First is assessing the athlete's needs. This involves understanding what type of support each athlete requires, recognizing that those needs will vary depending on their experience, performance level, and the situation they're in. Second is structuring the support network. This means clearly defining who provides what type of support. In skeleton, there's already a strong team culture, and coaching staff are highly qualified and play a central role in delivering performance and technical support. Teammates also contribute to the daily training environment. However, other important support providers, such as parents, strength and conditioning, and psychological support, can sometimes be more disconnected from the day-to-day performance environment. While they still play an important role, the findings suggest that there is an opportunity to better integrate these support providers into a more cohesive and aligned system. Third is optimizing the quality of support. This focuses on how support is delivered, emphasizing autonomy supportive behaviors like involving athletes in decisions and providing constructive feedback, while avoiding pressure-based or controlling approaches. And finally, developing athletes' abilities to use support effectively. This includes helping athletes learn how to seek support, communicate their needs, and make use of resources around them. Together, this framework moves from theory to practice. It shows how social support can be intentionally structured, not just within the core team environment, but across a broader support network, to improve coping, enhance motivation, and ultimately support performance. To apply this framework effectively, it needs to be integrated into the full training and competition cycle. In the preseason, the focus is on assessing athletes' needs, setting goals, and establishing clear support structures. This is where the expectations are set and roles are defined, not just within the core team, but across the broader support network. During the season, the emphasis shifts to monitoring and adjusting. This includes regular check-ins, providing feedback, and adapting support strategies based on performance demands and athlete needs. It also creates opportunities to better connect different support providers like strength and conditioning, psychological support, and family so that they are more aligned with what the athlete is experiencing. In the postseason, the focus is on reviewing and refining the system. This involves evaluating what worked, identifying gaps, and making adjustments for the next cycle. An important point is that this is not a one-time intervention. It's an ongoing process that evolves with the athlete and the environment, which aligns with work in athletic development and life skills by Danish and colleagues. So overall, the goal is to create a system that is not only structured, but also adaptable over time and fully integrated into the athlete's performance profile. In conclusion, social support is a critical factor in high-performance sport, but it's not something that develops automatically. The literature shows that support must be intentionally structured, carefully delivered, and aligned with the athlete's needs. When done effectively, it can influence how athletes cope with pressure, stay motivated, and ultimately perform. Within high-performance skeleton, athletes face unique physical and psychological demands. Creating effective support systems is particularly important. By applying a structured approach to social support, coaches and programs can create environments that not only enhance performance, but also support long-term athlete development and well-being.